The notification flashed across my phone screen while I sat at my desk reviewing intelligence reports. Home security system. Motion detected in home office. I pulled up the camera feed, and my blood turned to ice. My parents stood in my private workspace, my mother holding my work laptop, the one containing classified files I had accidentally left at home that morning. I watched in horror as she scrolled through documents, passing the screen toward my father. I grabbed my phone and dialed home, my hands shaking. Mom answered on the second ring, her voice cheerful and light. "Just sharing your boring government work," she said dismissively. "Nothing important here." Through the camera, I could see my father positioning documents on my scanner. My heart stopped. Without a word, I pressed the security alert button on my phone. Within minutes, response teams would be breaching all entrances to my house. I ran from the office, leaving my coffee spilling across my desk, my chair spinning behind me. My colleague, Jessica, called after me, but I didn't stop. I threw myself into my car and drove toward home at a speed that defied every traffic law. My phone rang. Christopher Bennett, my supervisor, his voice sharp with urgency. "Sophie, what's happening?" "My parents are in my house," I gasped, weaving through traffic. "They have my laptop, the classified laptop. They're accessing files right now." There was a pause that felt like an eternity. "How did they get in?" "I don't know. I didn't give them keys." "Christopher, those files contain intelligence on foreign operatives currently active on U.S. soil. If anyone gets that information, people will die." "Response teams are mobilizing now. How far are you?" 10 minutes. "Drive carefully. We'll handle this." His voice softened slightly. "Sophie, why was the laptop at home?" The question I had been dreading. "I worked late last night, past midnight. I was exhausted. I planned to bring it in first thing this morning, but I forgot it when I left for work at 6 p.m. I never thought anyone would be in my house. My parents live in Houston. That's a 3-hour drive. They never visit without calling first." Christopher was quiet for a moment. "Get there safely. We'll sort this out." I disconnected and pressed harder on the accelerator. My mind raced through the files on that laptop. Operation Northwind, the task force tracking Viktor Volkov's network, names of informants, safe house locations, surveillance photographs, everything we knew about foreign intelligence operations on American soil. If the wrong people accessed that information, our entire network would collapse, assets would be compromised, lives would end. I screeched into my driveway 5 minutes before the response teams arrived. The house looked peaceful, ordinary, exactly as I had left it that morning. I burst through the front door, my chest heaving, and ran straight to my home office. My parents stood there, looking, startled but not particularly concerned. My mother, Margaret, held my laptop in her hands, the screen still glowing with classified documents. My father, William, stood beside my scanner, several pages already processed and sitting in the output tray. "Sophie?" Mom smiled, that warm maternal smile I had known my entire life. "Honey, we just wanted to see what you've been working on so hard. You never talk about your job. We thought if we understood what you do, we could help you, support you better." I crossed the room in 2 strides and yanked the laptop from her hands. My fingers flew across the keyboard, checking the access history. My stomach dropped. 15 different files opened, hundreds of pages scrolled through. The timestamps showed they had been here for over 2 hours. "Why?" My voice came out as a whisper. "Why would you do this?" My father stepped forward, his expression earnest. "Your mother is right, Sophie. We're your parents. We have the right to know what's consuming your life. You work 80-hour weeks. You barely sleep. We worry about you." "This is classified information," I said, my voice rising. "Federal law. You just committed espionage. Do you understand that? Don't be dramatic, Mom said, waving her hand dismissively. It's just paperwork, government bureaucracy, nothing important. But I was not looking at my mother anymore. My eyes had caught something on my father's scanner. This was not the basic home scanner I owned. The device sitting on my desk was sophisticated, military grade, with encryption capabilities built into its display panel. I had seen equipment like this before in secure government facilities. My gaze shifted to my mother's purse, sitting open on my desk chair. Inside, I glimpsed a USB drive, but not an ordinary one. The casing had a specific design, a secure encryption drive used by intelligence agencies. My mind reeled. I looked back at my laptop screen, studying the pattern of access. The cursor movements were not random browsing. They were systematic, methodical, searching for specific information. This was not curious parents trying to understand their daughter's work. This was a targeted intelligence operation. The realization hit me like a physical blow. My parents had not stumbled into this. They had planned it. Sirens wailed outside, growing louder. In the space of 5 seconds, my front and back doors exploded inward simultaneously. 6 agents from Homeland Security and the FBI stormed through my house, weapons drawn, voices shouting commands. Hands up! Nobody move! Agent Daniel Parker led the breach, his face set in hard lines. 2 agents immediately moved toward my parents, forcing them to their knees, hands behind their backs. The metallic click of handcuffs echoed in my small office. My mother started crying. Sophie, what are you doing? We're your family. How could you call the police on us? My father's face transformed into anger. This is how you treat your parents? We raised you, sacrificed everything for you, and this is what we get. But I saw something else in my father's eyes. For just 1 second, when the agents grabbed him, his expression shifted. The anger disappeared, replaced by something cool and professional. The look of a trained operative, not a frightened civilian. Then it was gone, hidden again behind the mask of an outraged father. Agent Parker approached me. Miss Sophie, are you all right? I nodded, unable to speak. We need you to step outside while we secure the scene. Agent Morrison will take your statement. I walked out of my office on shaking legs. Behind me, I heard my mother sobbing, my father's angry protests. I stepped into my living room, the place where I had hosted family dinners, where we had laughed and shared stories, and I felt the foundation of my entire life cracking beneath my feet. Agent Emily Morrison sat across from me at my dining table, her notepad open, her expression carefully neutral. Through the walls, I could hear my parents being questioned in separate rooms. My house had become a crime scene, every room crawling with federal agents, evidence markers being placed, photographs being taken. Walk me through this morning, Emily said. Her voice was kind, but her eyes were sharp, assessing. I explained everything. The late-night work session, my exhaustion, forgetting the laptop, the unexpected arrival of my parents. Emily wrote quickly, her pen moving across the page. When was the last time your parents visited unannounced? She asked. I thought about it. Never. They always call at least a week in advance. They like to plan. My mother makes a whole itinerary when they visit. Did they have keys to your house? No, I never gave them spares. I live alone. I work in intelligence. I'm careful about security. Emily's pen paused. Then how did they get inside? That question hung in the air between us. Emily pulled out her tablet and showed me security footage from my front porch camera. I watched my father approach my door at 7:45 that morning, barely an hour after I had left for work. He knelt before my lock, and his hands moved with practiced efficiency. In 15 seconds, my door swung open. No fumbling, no hesitation, professional lockpicking. Your father has training, Emily observed. I couldn't speak. I watched him on the screen, his movements confident and skilled, and I saw a stranger wearing my father's face. The tech team entered carrying evidence bags. Inside one bag was my father's scanner. In another was the USB drive from my mother's purse. A young agent named Thomas approached Emily. You need to see this, he said, his voice tight. We followed him to my office, now filled with equipment and investigators. Thomas pointed to his laptop screen, showing analysis of the scanner. This device doesn't just scan documents. It transmits data in real time to an encrypted server. Everything they scanned was immediately uploaded. My vision swam. Where? What server? We're tracing it now, but the encryption is sophisticated, government level. Emily turned to the USB drive analysis. Another tech, a woman named Patricia, looked pale as she delivered her findings. This drive contains malware, advanced spyware designed to infiltrate secure systems. We also found a keystroke logger on Miss Sophie's laptop. It was installed 3 days ago. 3 days ago. I felt the room spinning. 3 days ago, I had brought my laptop home to work on a weekend briefing. 3 days ago, my father had called to check in, asking if I was home. A casual call. A loving father checking on his daughter. I had told him yes. I was working from home that day. The malware was installed remotely, Patricia continued. Someone accessed your laptop from outside your network and deployed the keystroke logger. Every stroke you've typed since then has been recorded and transmitted. Emily looked at me, her expression grim. Sophie, this is not a random breach. This is a coordinated intelligence operation that's been running for at least 3 days, possibly much longer. Agent Parker appeared in the doorway. We need you in the interrogation room. Agent Morrison and Sophie, you should hear this too. We walked down my hallway to my guest bedroom, now converted into a makeshift interrogation space. My father sat in a chair, his hands cuffed to the table. He looked different now. The warm, gentle father I knew had vanished. The man sitting before me was cold, controlled, his eyes calculating. Your father has something to say, Parker said. William looked at me, and for the first time in my life, I saw fear in his eyes. Not fear of arrest or prosecution, fear for someone else. I did it for Nathan, he said quietly. Nathan, my older brother. My stomach clenched. What about Nathan? My father took a deep breath. Your brother never quit gambling. He's in debt to loan sharks. $200,000. These aren't ordinary loan sharks, Sophie. They have connections to organized crime networks. They threatened to kill him. The room went silent. I thought about Nathan, living in Houston, working as a sales manager for a tech company. I had spoken to him just last week. He had sounded fine, normal, maybe a bit stressed, but nothing alarming. 6 months ago, William continued, a man named Matthew Thornton approached me. He knew about Nathan's debt. He offered to make it disappear. All of it. In exchange, he wanted information, classified information from you. You said no, I whispered, needing it to be true. I did it first. Then they sent me a video. My father's voice broke. They had Nathan in a warehouse. They broke his fingers. Sophie one by one, while he screamed. They said next time it would be worse. Next time they would send pieces of him to us in boxes. Emily leaned forward. When did you agree? 2 years ago. 2 years. I felt the floor drop away beneath me. 2 years of betrayal. 2 years of my father stealing classified information, putting lives at risk, destroying everything I had worked for. Your mother doesn't know, William said quickly. I told her we were just trying to understand your work. She thought this was about being supportive parents. Margaret is innocent in this. Parker crossed his arms. Who is Matthew Thornton working for? I don't know. He never said. But the equipment he gave me, the USB drives, the scanner, these are intelligence grade. Whoever is behind this has significant resources and connections. Emily pulled out her phone, already running a search on Matthew Thornton. Within seconds, she had results. She turned the screen toward me. Matthew Thornton, 51 years old, businessman with import and export companies. But as I scrolled through his business connections, patterns emerged. 5 different companies with foreign ownership, multiple contracts with defense contractors, financial ties to offshore accounts. He's a facilitator, I said, the pieces clicking together. He positions himself to access sensitive information from multiple sources. My father is not his only asset. Parker nodded. We'll bring Thornton in for questioning immediately. I looked at my father. This man who had taught me to ride a bike, who had attended every school event, who had told me he was proud when I joined Homeland Security. You could have come to us, to the agency. We protect witnesses. We could have helped Nathan. They said they had people inside, William replied. They said if I reported it, they would know, and Nathan would die. The door opened and Christopher Bennett entered. His face was drawn, exhausted. He had driven here from headquarters, and he carried the weight of this disaster in his posture. Sophie, he said quietly, I need to speak with you alone. We walked to my kitchen. Christopher leaned against the counter, and when he looked at me, I saw something in his expression that terrified me. Internal Affairs is opening an investigation, he said, into you. The words didn't make sense. What? They need to determine whether you were aware of your father's activities, whether you deliberately left your laptop accessible. That's insane. I'm the victim here. I know, but look at the timeline from their perspective. You forgot your laptop at home, which you never do. Your parents showed up unannounced, which they never do. The timing is too convenient. Some agents are asking whether you facilitated this breach. I felt rage burning through my shock. I would never betray my country. You know me, Christopher. You've worked with me for 5 years. I do know you. I believe you. But I have to follow protocol. Effective immediately, you're suspended pending investigation. I need your badge and your weapon. My hands shook as I removed my badge from my belt and my service weapon from its holster. I placed them on the counter between us. 5 years of dedication, of sacrifice, of sleepless nights protecting this country. And now I was being treated like a criminal. Don't leave the city, Christopher said. You'll be called in for questioning. Cooperate fully. Tell the truth. If you're innocent, the investigation will prove it. If I was innocent, the conditional stabbed through me. Christopher left, and I stood alone in my kitchen, listening to agents process my home, my life, my family. Through the window, I saw news vans arriving, cameras pointing at my house. Someone had leaked the story. By morning, my name and face would be everywhere, attached to words like espionage, betrayal, treason. The interrogations began the next morning. I sat in a cold, windowless room at Homeland Security headquarters, facing 2 internal affairs investigators who looked at me like I was already guilty. They asked the same questions over and over, circling back, trying to catch inconsistencies. Why did you take classified files home? I've explained this. I worked late. I was tired. I planned to bring the laptop in first thing. But you forgot. Yes. You've never forgotten before? In 5 years, you've never once left classified materials unsecured. Everyone makes mistakes. Convenient timing for a mistake. The sessions lasted hours, grinding me down, looking for cracks. They analyzed every aspect of my life. My phone records, my emails, my bank accounts, my travel history. They built a timeline of every interaction I'd had with my family over the past 2 years. They discovered that I had called Nathan 13 times in the past month, significantly more than usual. When I explained I was worried about my brother and wanted to check in, they made notes with skeptical expressions. They found that I had visited Houston 3 times in the past 6 months to see family. Each time, I had brought my laptop with me to work remotely. The investigators theorized that I had been gradually exposing information to my family over time, normalizing their access, preparing for the larger breach. That's not what happened, I insisted, but I could see they didn't believe me. Agent Emily Morrison, who had seemed sympathetic during the initial breach, now questioned me with professional distance. Did your father ever ask about your work? Of course. Parents ask about their children's jobs. What specifically did he ask? General things. How my day was? If I was stressed? Normal parent questions. Did you ever discuss classified operations? Never. I know the rules. But Emily's expression suggested she thought I was lying. The trust we had briefly shared during the chaos of the breach had evaporated. Now she was an investigator, and I was a suspect. On the third day of investigation, Jessica Walsh called me. My best friend and colleague sounded terrified. Sophie, I need to tell you something. Internal Affairs just questioned me. I felt dread settling in my stomach. About what? About 3 weeks ago, your brother Nathan contacted me. He said he wanted to surprise you with a gift. Something special. He asked about your schedule. When you worked from home, when you'd be at the office. I thought it was sweet, so I told him you usually work from home on Fridays. My breath caught. Fridays. My parents had broken into my house on a Friday. Jessica, you didn't know, but that's not all? Internal Affairs thinks I'm part of this. They're suggesting I deliberately provided information to help facilitate the breach. They're investigating me too. Sophie, I could lose my job. I could go to prison. You won't. You were trying to help. You didn't know what Nathan was really doing. They don't believe me. They think there's a pattern. They're saying your entire network was leaking information. You, me, maybe others. They're tearing apart our whole team. After Jessica hung up, I sat in my living room, still crowded with evidence markers and forensic equipment. I thought about the pattern investigators were building. From their perspective, it looked damning. A brother who asked about my schedule, a colleague who provided that information, a forgotten laptop at exactly the right time, parents who showed up exactly when I wasn't home. If I didn't know the truth, I would suspect me too. The media coverage grew worse each day. My face appeared on national news. Headlines screamed about Homeland security breaches, about intelligence analysts betraying their country. Reporters camped outside my house, shouting questions whenever I appeared. My neighbors stopped making eye contact. I received death threats on social media, hundreds of messages calling me a traitor, demanding I be executed. My entire reputation, everything I had built over 5 years of dedicated service, crumbled in 72 hours. I became the face of betrayal, and no amount of protesting my innocence made any difference. The court of public opinion had already convicted me. On the fourth night, I sat alone in my house, curtains drawn against the cameras outside, and I realized something. Waiting for the investigation to clear me wasn't enough. If I wanted to prove my innocence, I had to do it myself. I had to find the real story behind my father's betrayal and expose whoever was pulling the strings. I still had my skills. I still had my training. I might not have my badge, but I still knew how to investigate. And I wasn't going to let someone destroy my life without fighting back. I started with Matthew Thornton. Without access to government databases, I had to work with public information, But years of intelligence training had taught me how to find patterns in seemingly innocent data. I spent 18 hours straight searching through business records, property filings, corporate registries, and social media connections. Matthew Thornton owned 7 different companies, each with complex ownership structures involving shell corporations and offshore entities. But when I mapped out the connections, I found something interesting. 5 of Matthew's companies had contracts with defense contractors who worked on classified projects. 2 companies had foreign investors from countries known for intelligence operations against the United States. Matthew was not just a businessman. He was a node in a network designed to collect sensitive information from multiple access points. My father was not his only asset. Matthew had positioned himself to reach into different parts of the intelligence community, defense industry, and government operations. This was sophisticated, long-term intelligence work. But Matthew was not at the top. Someone was directing him, coordinating the operation, someone with the resources and knowledge to run a network this complex. I thought about what my father had said. Matthew mentioned someone named Victor. I searched for Victor connected to Matthew, to foreign intelligence, to operations on U.S. soil. The name Viktor Volkov appeared repeatedly in intelligence reports I remembered from my work. He was a ghost, a suspected foreign intelligence officer operating in the United States. But there were no confirmed sightings, no photographs, no concrete evidence. He existed in rumors and suspicions. Then I remembered something that made my blood run cold. One of the files my parents had accessed on my laptop contained our intelligence on Viktor Volkov. It listed suspected network members, safe house locations, contact methods, everything we knew about his operations. This wasn't about stealing general intelligence. Victor wanted to know specifically what we knew about him. He wanted to identify leaks in his network, find out which of his people might be compromised. This was counterintelligence, and if Victor now knew everything in those files, he would start eliminating anyone who could identify him. Informants would disappear. Witnesses would die. We were about to lose years of intelligence work, and people were going to be killed. I had to warn someone, but I was suspended. If I contacted my agency, they would think I was trying to manipulate the investigation. I needed proof. I decided to go to Houston to find Nathan. My brother was at the center of this. If I could get him to tell me everything he knew about Matthew and Victor, I might be able to piece together enough evidence to prove the real scope of this operation. I bought a plane ticket with cash, not wanting to create a digital trail. Flying to Houston violated the order not to leave the city, but I didn't care anymore. My career was already destroyed. What mattered now was stopping Victor before more people died. Nathan's apartment was in a rundown complex on the east side of Houston. I knocked on his door for 5 minutes before he finally answered. When he opened the door, I barely recognized him. My brother looked like he had aged 10 years in the past few months. He was thin, gaunt, with dark circles under his eyes and a yellowish tint to his skin. His hands shook. He had a fading bruise on his left cheek, and his right hand was bandaged. "Sophie," he said, his voice breaking. "Oh God, Sophie." He pulled me inside and immediately started crying, not quiet tears, but deep, wrenching sobs that shook his whole body. I held my brother while he fell apart, and I felt rage building inside me at whoever had reduced him to this. When he finally calmed enough to speak, the story poured out of him. The gambling had never stopped. He had just gotten better at hiding it. Online poker, sports betting, high-stakes games in private rooms. He had lost everything: his savings, his retirement, money he borrowed from friends. Then he borrowed from people who didn't accept excuses or delays. The debt grew to $200,000. The loan sharks were not local criminals. They had connections to international organized crime. When Nathan couldn't pay, they took him to a warehouse. They broke 2 of his fingers with a hammer while filming it. They sent the video to my father. Matthew Thornton showed up the next day. Nathan said he knew everything: the debt, the threats, the video. He said he could make it all disappear. He seemed like a miracle. What did he want in return? Information about you, your schedule, your habits, your security measures. He said it was for a background check, some kind of enhanced security clearance review. It sounded official. I was desperate. I told him everything. Did Matthew ever mention who he worked for? Nathan nodded. Once I heard him on the phone. He said a name, Victor. He said, Victor wants this done cleanly, no traces back to us. Victor Volkov, the confirmation I needed. Nathan, I need you to come with me. We need to report this to the FBI. Your testimony can help expose this entire operation. I can't. If I talk, they'll kill me. They'll kill you anyway. Matthew doesn't leave witnesses. The only way you survive is if we bring down this entire network. Before Nathan could respond, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. I know where you are. You should not have come to Houston. I looked out Nathan's window and saw a dark sedan parked across the street. 2 men sat inside, watching the building. We need to leave now. Nathan and I went out the back exit of his apartment building, moving quickly through the parking lot. But the sedan was already moving, circling around. Another car appeared, blocking our path. I grabbed Nathan's hand and ran. We cut through yards, jumped fences, and I tried to remember my training for evading pursuit. But I hadn't trained for this in years, and Nathan was out of shape and terrified. The pursuers were professional. They stayed back far enough to avoid confrontation, but close enough that we couldn't escape. They were herding us, driving us, toward something. We reached a shopping mall and ran inside, losing ourselves in the crowd. I pulled Nathan into a department store, then into a dressing room. We waited, listening to footsteps passing by, voices talking quietly. I checked my phone. No signal inside the store. We couldn't stay here. Eventually, they would check every room, every hiding place. We needed help, but I didn't know who to trust. Then my phone vibrated with another text, this time from Jessica. Sophie, where are you? Christopher is looking for you. He knows you left the city. There's a warrant for your arrest. A warrant? I was officially a fugitive now. Nathan looked at me with fear in his eyes. What do we do? We run, I said, and we figure out how to fight back. We waited in that dressing room for 45 minutes, listening to the sounds of shoppers passing by, announcement systems calling for assistance in various departments, the everyday normalcy of people going about their lives while we hid from men who wanted to kill us. When the sounds of pursuit seemed to fade, I led Nathan out through an emergency exit on the far side of the mall. The alarm blared as we pushed through the door, but we kept running. We reached a residential neighborhood and slowed to a walk, trying to blend in, 2 people out for an afternoon stroll. My phone rang. Christopher Bennett. I hesitated, then answered. Sophie, what are you doing in Houston? I'm trying to find proof. Christopher, this is bigger than my father. Victor Volkov is running a counterintelligence operation. He's going to start eliminating witnesses and informants now that he knows what we know about him. Then come in. Report what you found. Let us handle it. I can't. There's a warrant for my arrest. Yes, because you violated a direct order and fled the city. That looks extremely guilty. Sophie, you're making this worse for yourself. Or I'm the only one actually trying to stop what's happening. Where are you right now? I looked around, considering whether to tell him. Something in Christopher's voice felt off. Too calm, too controlled. I need to go, I said, and hung up. Nathan and I walked for another 20 minutes, eventually finding a bus stop. We rode the bus downtown, then transferred to another heading toward the airport. I wasn't planning to fly anywhere, but airports were crowded, public, harder for someone to make a move without witnesses. That's when I saw the car again, the same dark sedan, 3 vehicles behind the bus. "They're still following us," I told Nathan. "How do they keep finding us?" "My phone. Of course they were tracking my phone." I should have thought of that immediately. I pulled out the SIM card and threw it out the bus window, then powered down the phone completely. We got off at the next stop and ducked into a convenience store. I bought a prepaid phone with cash while Nathan stood watch by the window. As I was activating the phone, a black SUV pulled up outside. 2 men got out, scanning the street. We went out the back through an alley and emerged on a busy street. I hailed a cab and gave the driver an address on the other side of Houston. We needed to get far away from here, find somewhere safe to regroup. The cab dropped us at a small motel, the kind that accepted cash and didn't ask questions. I paid for a room, and we locked ourselves inside. Nathan sat on the edge of the bed, his head in his hands. "This is my fault," he said. "All of this. If I hadn't gambled, if I'd just gotten help instead of borrowing from criminals, none of this would have happened. Dad wouldn't be in jail. You wouldn't have lost your job. People aren't going to die because of me. Viktor Volkov was going to find a way in regardless," I said. "If it wasn't you, it would have been someone else. These operations target vulnerabilities. They're patient. They wait for the right opening." My new phone rang. Unknown number. I answered cautiously. "Sophie." The voice belonged to Emily Morrison. "Listen to me very carefully. Don't talk. Just listen. I know you're in Houston. I know you're in trouble. I'm here to help." "How did you get this number?" "I just activated it 10 minutes ago." "Because I've been tracking Matthew Thornton's people and they're tracking you. I intercepted their communications. Sophie, I never believed you were guilty. I've been investigating parallel to internal affairs. I found connections between Matthew and a series of suspicious deaths in the intelligence community over the past 2 years. 3 analysts died in accidents. All of them worked on cases related to foreign operatives." My breath caught. "Viktor has been eliminating people who knew too much." "Yes. And you're next on that list. Where are you?" I gave Emily the address. She arrived 20 minutes later, alone, in an unmarked car. She came to our room, and I saw that she was carrying files. Lots of them. "I've been building a case," Emily said, spreading documents across the motel bed. "Matthew Thornton has connections to organized crime, foreign intelligence services, and at least a dozen different intelligence gathering operations. He's not working alone. He has a network of recruiters, handlers, and operatives." She pulled out photographs. Matthew meeting with various people in restaurants, parking lots, office buildings, financial records showing payments from offshore accounts, phone records revealing a pattern of encrypted communications. "But here's what's really interesting," Emily continued. "Matthew reports to someone inside our own agency, someone high-level enough to access classified operations, to know which analysts to target to protect his network from investigation." "Who?" Emily hesitated. "I don't have proof yet, just suspicions, but I think it's Christopher Bennett." The words hit me like a physical blow. Christopher, my mentor, the man who had recruited me into Homeland Security, who had guided my career, who I trusted completely. That's impossible, is it? Think about it, Sophie. Christopher had the authority to assign you to cases involving Viktor Volkov. He knew what information you had access to. He was in the perfect position to identify you as a target. And when your father's operation was discovered, Christopher immediately moved to suspend you and redirect the investigation toward you as a suspect rather than a victim. I thought about the timeline, Christopher's questions, his calm demeanor when I called him, panicking about my parents, the way he had shut down my explanations and immediately launched an investigation into me rather than focusing on finding Victor's network. "We need proof," I said. "I'm working on it, but Sophie, you need to understand how dangerous this is. If Christopher is the mole, he has access to everything. Our investigative techniques, our protocols, our safe houses. He can stay ahead of us at every turn." A knock at the door made us all freeze. Emily drew her weapon, moving toward the door silently. She looked through the peephole, then her body went rigid. "It's Christopher," she whispered. Another knock, harder this time. "Sophie, I know you're in there. Open the door. We need to talk." Emily looked at me, her weapon still drawn. I moved to the window, pulling back the curtain slightly. 2 more agents stood outside, flanking the door. We were trapped. "Sophie," Christopher called through the door. "I'm not here to arrest you. I'm here because I know what you found, and I'm here to offer you a choice." Emily positioned herself beside the door. I nodded to her. She opened it slowly, her weapon trained on Christopher. He stood there, hands visible, no weapon drawn, but his expression was cold, calculating, nothing like the warm mentor I had known. "May I come in?" he asked. "Stay where you are," Emily ordered. Christopher smiled slightly. "Agent Morrison, I wondered when you'd figure it out. You're good. Better than most, but not good enough." "You're under arrest," Emily said. "On what charges? Suspicion? You have no proof. Everything you've gathered is circumstantial. I've been very careful." "Why?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "Why betray your country? Why betray me?" Christopher's expression softened slightly. "I never meant for you to get hurt, Sophie. You were a tool, nothing more. Your access to Victor's files was too valuable to pass up. But I genuinely respected you. You're brilliant at your job. You sold out your country for money, for survival." Christopher's calm cracked slightly. 10 years ago, I made mistakes. Gambling debts, just like Nathan. Victor found out. He offered me a way out. By the time I realized what I'd agreed to, it was too late. I was in too deep. So many lives destroyed because of gambling, because of debts, because people made desperate choices they couldn't take back. "Christopher Bennett," Emily said formally, "you're under arrest for espionage, conspiracy, and violations of federal security laws." Christopher laughed. "You're not arresting anyone, Agent Morrison." The window behind us exploded inward. Gas canisters hit the floor, filling the room with white smoke. I heard shouting, footsteps, chaos. Hands grabbed me, pulling me toward the door. I fought, but there were too many of them. I heard Emily's weapon discharge, more shouting. Then everything went dark. I woke up in the back of a moving vehicle, my hands zip-tied in front of me. My head throbbed where someone had struck me during the chaos at the motel. Nathan sat beside me, also restrained, his eyes wide with terror. Across from us sat Christopher, watching us with that same calm expression. "Where are you taking us?" I demanded. "Somewhere quiet. Somewhere we can talk without interruption." He leaned forward. "Sophie, it doesn't have to end badly for you. You and Nathan can walk away from this. All you have to do is cooperate." "Cooperate how?" "Tell the investigation that your father acted alone, that he manipulated you, used your trust against you. Take a deal. Plead to negligence. Get a reduced sentence. In a few years, this will all be forgotten. You can rebuild your life. While you continue selling intelligence to Victor. Victor is careful. He takes what he needs, but never enough to cause catastrophic damage. It's a sustainable arrangement. Both sides benefit. People die because of the information you sell. People die every day for countless reasons. That's the nature of intelligence work. You know that. I looked at Christopher and realized I was staring at a stranger. Whatever values or principles he once held had been eroded away by years of compromise. He had rationalized his betrayal so completely that he genuinely believed he was being reasonable. The vehicle stopped. We were at a warehouse district, industrial buildings standing empty in the fading evening light. They pulled us out and pushed us into a building. Inside, Matthew Thornton waited, along with 3 other men I didn't recognize. "So, this is the analyst who caused all the trouble," Matthew said, studying me. "You should have stayed suspended and kept quiet." "She's stubborn," Christopher said. "Always has been. That's what made her good at her job. It's also what's going to get her killed." They took us to a back room, empty except for 2 chairs bolted to the floor. They forced me into one chair, Nathan into the other, and secured us with more restraints. "Last chance," Christopher said to me. "Cooperate or disappear. Choose." Before I could answer, my phone, which they had taken from me earlier, buzzed in Christopher's pocket. He pulled it out and frowned at the screen. "Multiple security alerts from your house," he said. "FBI is executing another search warrant." He looked at Matthew. "Did you clean everything?" "Everything traceable was removed days ago." But I saw something in Matthew's expression, a flicker of concern, and I realized something. These men were good at their work, careful and methodical, but they had made one crucial mistake. They had underestimated my father. My father had been working with them for 2 years, but he wasn't really on their side. He had been collecting evidence, building a case, waiting for the right moment to expose everything. The break-in at my house wasn't about stealing information. It was about triggering an investigation that would eventually unravel the entire network. "You never found the real evidence, did you?" I said. Christopher turned to me sharply. "What?" "My father hid something in my house, something you never found. That's what the FBI is searching for right now." Matthew moved quickly, grabbing Christopher's phone and making a call. His conversation was curt, urgent. When he hung up, his face had gone pale. "They found a USB drive hidden in Sophie's house, inside her jewelry box. False bottom. They're reviewing the contents now." Christopher's calm finally shattered. "What's on it?" "Everything," I said, though I was guessing. "Recordings of your meetings with Matthew, financial transactions, communications with Victor, evidence of other moles in the intelligence community. My father spent 2 years documenting your entire operation." The room erupted into chaos. Matthew and Christopher argued, their voices rising. The other men pulled out weapons, looking nervously toward the exits. In the confusion, I worked on my restraints. The zip ties were tight, but I had been trained for this scenario. I twisted my wrists, creating pressure, looking for any weakness. A gunshot exploded through the warehouse. Everyone froze. Emily Morrison stood in the doorway, her weapon drawn, blood running down her left arm, but her stance solid. "Drop your weapons. All of you. FBI and Homeland Security are surrounding this building. You have nowhere to go." Behind her, I could see red and blue lights flashing through the windows. Sirens wailed, growing louder. Christopher's face transformed into something ugly and desperate. "You're ruined, Christopher," I said. "It's over." What happened next occurred in seconds but felt like slow motion. Christopher pulled a weapon from his jacket. Emily fired, hitting him in the shoulder. He went down. Matthew ran for a side exit but found agents blocking his path. The other men surrendered, dropping their weapons, hands raised. Emily cut through my restraints, then Nathan's. My brother collapsed into my arms, sobbing with relief. Within minutes, the warehouse filled with federal agents. Paramedics treated Emily's wound, which turned out to be a graze from the earlier fight at the motel. Christopher was loaded into an ambulance under armed guard. Matthew and his associates were cuffed and led away. Agent Parker approached me, his expression apologetic. "Miss Sophie, I owe you an apology. We found the USB drive your father hid. The evidence on it is comprehensive. It proves everything. Your innocence, Christopher's betrayal, the entire Viktor Volkov network. You were right all along." I learned later that my father had spent 2 years pretending to cooperate with Matthew while secretly recording everything. He had documented meetings, copied files, traced financial transactions. He had known that Christopher was the inside man but needed proof before exposing him. The break-in at my house was the trigger. My father had hidden the evidence USB drive, then deliberately triggered the security alert. He knew it would start an investigation. He knew Internal Affairs would dig deep. Eventually, they would find the drive, and everything would unravel. He had sacrificed himself, his freedom, and his relationship with his daughter to expose the conspiracy. And it had worked. The next 3 weeks moved like a whirlwind. Christopher Bennett, Matthew Thornton, and 7 other individuals were arrested and charged with espionage, conspiracy, and dozens of related federal crimes. The USB drive my father had hidden contained evidence of a spy network that had been operating within U.S. intelligence agencies for over 8 years. Viktor Volkov himself was arrested in a coordinated international operation. It turns out the intelligence on my laptop, combined with my father's recordings, gave law enforcement everything they needed to locate and apprehend him. He had been living under a false identity in Virginia, posing as a consultant for technology companies, all while running his intelligence network. The evidence exonerated me completely. Internal Affairs issued a formal apology. My suspension was lifted, my badge and weapon returned. The agency offered me a promotion and a commendation for my role in exposing the conspiracy. I declined. I needed time to process what had happened, time to heal, time to understand who I was beyond my job. My father was released from custody, all charges dropped. When I saw him walk out of the detention center, I ran to him and held him for a long time. He had lost weight. His hair had gone grayer. But when he looked at me, I saw my father again. Not the operative, not the spy, just the man who had raised me. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice breaking. "I'm so sorry for everything. You saved lives, Dad. You exposed a network that would have kept operating for years. You stopped Viktor. I almost destroyed you in the process. But you didn't. You trusted me to figure it out. You trusted me to be strong enough to handle it." My mother, Margaret, had a harder time processing everything. She had believed she was helping her daughter understand her work, only to discover her husband had been running a counterintelligence operation without telling her. She felt betrayed and used. They went to counseling, working through the deception, the secrets, the way the past 2 years had all been a lie. Nathan entered a residential rehabilitation program for gambling addiction. He also faced legal consequences for his role in providing information about me, though his sentence was reduced significantly because of his cooperation and his status as a victim. He had a long road ahead, but he was finally confronting his addiction instead of running from it. Emily Morrison and I became close friends. She had been shot protecting me, had risked her career to investigate the truth when everyone else accepted the easy narrative. We met for coffee once a week, sometimes talking about the case, sometimes just enjoying normal conversation about books and movies and ordinary life. Jessica Walsh was fully cleared of any wrongdoing. She returned to work, though the experience had shaken her. She told me she would never again give out information without carefully considering the consequences, no matter how innocent the request seemed. 3 months after the arrests, I returned to work at Homeland Security. I requested a transfer to a different division, A fresh start away from the people and places that reminded me of Christopher's betrayal. My new supervisor, a woman named Laura Daniels, welcomed me warmly and gave me interesting cases to work on. But I had changed. I no longer trusted blindly. I questioned more. I verified information multiple times. I looked for patterns and connections that others might miss. The experience had made me better at my job, but it had also made me more cautious, more guarded. One evening, 6 months after everything ended, my family gathered for dinner at my parents' house in Houston. It was the first time we had all been together since the arrests. The atmosphere was tentative at first, everyone careful with their words, uncertain of the boundaries. My mother had cooked my favorite meal, pot roast with vegetables. Nathan looked healthier, 90 days sober, his eyes clearer than I had seen them in years. My father seemed older, but more at peace, as if exposing the conspiracy had lifted a weight he had been carrying. We ate and talked about small things at first: my mother's garden, Nathan's new job at a nonprofit, my father's plans to volunteer at a veterans organization, normal family conversation. Then my father raised his glass. "I want to propose a toast to family. We've been through something that should have destroyed us, but we're still here, still together, still fighting for each other." We clinked glasses, and in that moment, I felt something shift. We weren't going to pretend the past hadn't happened. We weren't going to act like everything was fine, but we were choosing to move forward together, to rebuild trust slowly, to forgive the painful choices made under impossible circumstances. I looked around the table at my family, flawed, complicated, and human, and I realized something important. Perfection wasn't the goal. Understanding was. Forgiveness was. Growth was. We had all made mistakes. My father had kept secrets that nearly destroyed us. Nathan had made terrible choices driven by addiction. My mother had trusted when she should have questioned. I had been so focused on my job that I missed the warning signs in my own family. But we had also shown courage. My father had risked everything to expose corruption. Nathan had finally confronted his addiction. My mother was learning to ask hard questions. I had fought back when everything seemed lost. The intelligence world is built on secrets, on compartmentalization, on trusting your team while suspecting everyone else. But I learned that sometimes the most dangerous betrayals come from the people you trust most. And sometimes the greatest acts of loyalty look like betrayal until you see the whole picture. My father had taught me that lesson. He had looked like a traitor while actually being a hero. He had let me hate him, let me believe the worst, because he knew that eventually the truth would emerge. He had faith in me, in the system, in justice. That faith had been tested. We had all been tested, but we had survived. As I drove back to my apartment that night, I thought about the question I had asked myself in those dark days when I was suspended and hunted. Was I strong enough to handle this? Did I have what it took to fight back against forces so much bigger than me? The answer was yes. But not because I was special or extraordinarily brave. Because when pushed to the edge, when everything was stripped away, I discovered that I had something more important than skills or training. I had principles I wasn't willing to compromise. I had a sense of right and wrong that guided me even when the path was unclear. And I had people who loved me enough to sacrifice for me. That was the real lesson. Strength doesn't come from being invincible. It comes from being willing to stand up, even when you're terrified, even when you're not sure you can win, even when everyone has turned against you. I had stood up. I had fought. And I had won. Not just the investigation or the case, but something more important. I had won back my life, my integrity, my sense of self. I had proven to myself that I could handle the worst betrayal imaginable and come out the other side, still believing in justice, still believing in truth. The world of intelligence is complicated. Sometimes the good guys do bad things for good reasons. Sometimes the bad guys were once good guys who made one wrong choice that led to another. Sometimes the truth is buried under layers of deception, and you have to dig through pain and doubt to find it. But it's worth digging. It's worth fighting, because at the end of the day, the truth matters. Justice matters. Holding people accountable matters. My father understood that. That's why he spent 2 years building a case, collecting evidence, waiting for the right moment. He knew that exposing Christopher and Victor was more important than his own freedom or reputation. He was willing to let his daughter believe he was a traitor if that's what it took to bring down a network of real traitors. That kind of sacrifice is rare. That kind of courage is extraordinary. I'm proud to be his daughter. So, what would you have done if you were in my position? If you discovered your family was involved in espionage, would you have called in the response teams or tried to protect them? If your mentor betrayed you, would you have kept fighting or given up? Have you ever had to choose between loyalty to family and loyalty to your principles? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear your perspective on this impossible situation. And if this story resonated with you, if it made you think about trust and betrayal and the complicated nature of loyalty, please hit that like button. Subscribe to hear more stories about the messy, complicated, real situations that test who we are. Share this with someone who needs to hear about fighting back against impossible odds. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for hearing me out when the whole world had already decided I was guilty. Sometimes that's all we need. Someone willing to listen, to consider that maybe things are not what they seem, to believe that truth is worth pursuing even when it's painful. I hope you never have to face a situation like this. But if you do, I hope you remember that you're stronger than you think, that doing the right thing is worth it even when it costs you everything, and that sometimes the people who look like villains are actually heroes waiting for their moment to reveal the truth. Stay safe out there. Question everything, trust carefully, and never stop fighting for what's right, even when the whole world tells you you're wrong.